Winston Churchill famously warned us that those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But what happens when we don't know the history? Today's list will look at 10 questions that historians still can't answer. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video update. Without further ado, let's dive in. Number 10. What happened to Abigail Williams? Abigail Williams is one of history's most influential real-life plot devices. She was one of the first children to falsely accuse neighbors of witchcraft in 1692. This would ultimately lead to the Salem witch trials, a notorious period in United States history where hysteria ruled, and at least 25 people were killed. Abigail was staying with a relative, the village pastor Samuel Parris, and his 2 slaves. One of his slaves, Tituba, was among the first group of 3 to be arrested under suspicion of using specters, or ghosts, to torment and harm the household's children. Although Tituba survived those Salem witch trials, tucked away in a prison cell, this first round of accusations led by Abigail Williams and the pastor's daughter, Betty Parris, kicked off the witch hunt that would see 19 hanged and hundreds imprisoned. One study suggests that the strange afflictions of the bewitched could have been caused by a fungus found in rye and wheat. It can cause delusions, vomiting, and muscle spasms. We might know what caused folks to present as bewitched, but Abigail Williams effectively disappears from history after her 15 minutes in the spotlight. Number 9. Cleopatra's final resting place. There is perhaps no more famous ancient power couple than Antony and Cleopatra. Countless films, plays, and stories have been told about the star-crossed lovers. Cleopatra was the last queen of Egypt, and was romantically connected to both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. After being captured by Roman Emperor Octavian, she killed herself in 30 BC. It is famously recorded that she used the venomous snakebite of an asp to do the deed. She was subsequently buried by Antony, according to ancient texts. Temples have been found as recently as 2019, full of coins minted during Cleopatra's reign, leading to excitement that the tomb discovered was imminent. So far, however, archaeologists continue to find themselves empty-handed. Many believe her tomb could be in an area of Alexandria, now underwater, making the odds of finding her tomb slim. Number 8. What became of the Corte-Real brothers? Early in the 1500s, Europeans were increasingly crossing the Atlantic, looking for a sea route to China. One of these explorers was Gaspar Corte-Real, hailing from Portugal. He sailed west with 3 ships in 1501. After running into an ice pack, they turned south, landing on what was most likely Newfoundland. 2 of the ships returned, packed with 50 forcibly captured natives, but Gaspar was not among them. His older brother, Miguel Corte-Real, led an expedition to find Gaspar the following year. As fate would have it, Miguel was also never heard from again. The third brother, Vasco Anís, joined the search in 1503, but found nothing. At least he was able to make his way back to Portugal. Hundreds of years later, archaeologists discovered a large rusty sandstone rock in Narragansett Bay, present-day Rhode Island. Dubbed the Dighton Writing Rock, many inscriptions cover the surface, including an entry that reads, Miguel Corte-Real, 1511, in the Portuguese royal coat of arms. Researchers have surmised that Miguel's fleet wandered the unfamiliar New England coast for years, lost on an unfamiliar shore. Number 7. Was there a conspiracy against Anne Boleyn? The downfall of Anne Boleyn, Queen of England and second wife of King Henry VIII, has been studied by scholars for ages. She was a pivotal figure in the political and religious turmoil that signaled the start of the English Reformation. Today, many scholars agree that the king's accusation of high treason was falsified, an elaborate plot to remove her from the throne so that King Henry VIII could move on to his next wife, Jane Seymour. Boleyn was accused of adultery, incest, and plotting to kill the king. Found guilty before a jury of peers, including her uncle and former betrothed, she was beheaded a short time later. It's unknown whether the king himself concocted the elaborate plot or one of his advisors, Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell had already started breaking up the Catholic Church's powers in response to Pope Clement VII being unwilling to annul the king's marriage. So a plot to fix the problem doesn't seem much of a stretch. Number 6. What lies inside the Daisen Kofun? Most of us are familiar with the massive pyramids of Egypt, perhaps even the Mayan pyramids across the Atlantic. But did you know that Japan is home to megalithic tombs as well, known as Kofun? There are more than 161,000 tomb sites as early as the 2000s. The largest of all is known as the Daisen Kofun. It measures nearly 1,600 feet in length and 115 feet in height. The Great Pyramid of Giza might win the prize for height, but Daisen beats it in surface area and volume. While you can walk around the outside, the tomb's interior has yet to be excavated, so it's unknown what is inside. One running theory is that it is the final resting place of Emperor Nintoku. Enough historical evidence does not exist to determine if Nintoku was real or a fabled emperor. Number 5. What happened to the Joyita? Disappearances at sea happen from time to time for various reasons: inclement weather, human error, pirates, and foul play. But often, we're left speculating, never knowing for sure. Such is the case with the Joyita. Carrying 25 passengers and crew, they all disappeared from the merchant's vessel without a trace. After disappearing in the South Pacific in 1955, she was found adrift and listing heavily to the left. The ship's incredible buoyancy made it nearly impossible to sink, so investigators were stumped as to why they hadn't waited for help. Further investigation showed that 4 tons of cargo were missing, and the radio had been set to a channel reserved for distressed watercraft. Hypotheses abound. Some believe that the captain must have been injured or dead, since he would have encouraged everyone to stay on board, secure in the knowledge that the boat would float even if damaged. Distrust of the Japanese led some to claim that a fleet of Japanese fishing vessels had done the damage. Insurance fraud and mutiny round the suspicion surrounding the Joyita. Number 4. Who were the Sea People? Documentation of historical events is, of course, colored by those who have written it. In the case of ancient Egyptians, they left behind depictions of an unknown group of people that historian Emmanuel de Rouge described as Sea People in 1855. These separate narratives from ancient Egyptian records denote these people between 1210 and 1100 BCE. Descriptions vary but have similarities when describing clothing, hair, and other defining characteristics. There are many hypotheses as to where these mysterious people originated. Some theories include Palestine, Minoan, Trojan, Italian, and even attacks from Antonians, spurred to action by famine. We'll probably never know who these people were, and if any of our theories are correct, or an entirely different group we don't know anything about were the true Sea Peoples. Number 3. Who was Jack the Ripper? Also known as Leather Apron and the Whitechapel Murderer, Jack the Ripper is one of the most infamous serial killers. Most often attacking female prostitutes in the slums of the East End of London, the killer would slit their throats and then mutilate the abdominal area, sometimes removing internal organs. It's often been suspected that the killer had some surgical or anatomical knowledge because of this grisly fact. At least 5 gruesome murders are attributed to Jack the Ripper, and one of the most widely known mysteries of serial violence. Number 2. Who killed JFK? President John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the United States, was assassinated in 1963 while riding in a presidential motorcade in Texas. Following a 10-month investigation, the Warren Commission stated that Lee Harvey Oswald, a former U.S. Marine, had carried out the assassination working alone. 16 years later, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations supported the Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald's shot killed Kennedy, and noted that it was likely the result of a conspiracy. The committee also said that there was likely an additional gunshot that day, although no further information has come to light. We may never know exactly what happened, but conspiracy theorists and historians continue to ponder the question. Number 1. Where did Amelia Earhart crash? Amelia Earhart is perhaps one of the most well-known names in aviation, behind the Wright brothers. The first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, she continued to set records, authored books, and helped form the 99s, an organization for female pilots. She set her sights on being the first female to circumnavigate the globe in 1937, along with her navigator Fred Noonan. On the morning of July 2nd, they took off from New Guinea, starting one of the last legs of the journey. They should have landed at Howland Island 2,500 miles away, but never arrived. The Itasca, a U.S. Coast Guard ship, was the first to signal the disappearance as they were waiting to guide the aviator to the small island. It's unknown what happened to Amelia and Fred, but cloudy skies, a tight fuel supply, and a faulty radio may have played a role in the disappearance. A massive search and rescue mission was launched, covering 250,000 miles of ocean, but they were never found. A court order declared them legally dead 18 months after the disappearance. Debate continues to rage over what happened that fateful day. Millions of dollars have been spent searching for evidence of what happened to the intrepid woman and her navigator. I hope you enjoyed today's list. What questions are you most interested in finally learning the answer to? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it or learned something interesting. Until next time.